I'm the chair of the Blue Ribbon Resilient Communities program with the America's Wetland Foundation, and this is another one in the series of meetings we're having all across the Gulf Coast for communities to talk about their future and talk about what they want their communities to look like in the years ahead for their children and their grandchildren. It's a very important discussion that's enabling these communities to confront the very difficult challenges and problems of coastal erosion in a very practical and forceful way.
What does the research show as far as the potential damage if coastal erosion goes unchecked, particularly with Louisiana's Gulf Coast?
We already know the dangers, of course, and are already experiencing the problems. We thought maybe we had 25 years to do something about this. We think we may now have less than a decade, or we're looking at areas in Terrebonne Parish where we are right now, and in Lafourche and Plaquemines and other areas that may not exist any longer. As a result of the continuous erosion. And so that's what we're talking about, trying to identify solutions, partnerships that can be created through NGOs and through government, federal, state, and local, to try and identify some practical solutions to try and combat this terrible problem that threatens not only South Louisiana, but all of Louisiana, and then consequently all of America.
Here we are in Lafourche and Terrebonne Parish, which is right in the crosshairs of maybe the greatest disaster facing any area in this whole country. And our job, as has been true in other places and other locations, is to try to get everyone at the table to begin to look at the true consequences and the realities of what's facing us, and to focus on what options the citizens have in the event of the worst case, and what we need to do to coalesce and to get our act together so we can begin to push forward in Washington and other places. It's going to take a full component of all the people involved.
Here in Houma, we're looking at the place that has the greatest loss of land in the planet due to coastal erosion. And so this is going to be a very exciting discussion, because we have to get on from the planning aspects to really letting the folks know in these communities what they face. It's an uphill climb. We think that getting real solid plans on the ground in Houma is going to be the beginning of restoration in the state.
I submit that the communities who are most at risk and who are going to be the write-offs for the more important communities, the more financially important communities, those little people, as our friend from last year said, should have a voice in what happens to them and how that happens to them. And one of the ways I challenge everyone, the discussion should be in the next 2 days, is what about resilience for our communities? If that means there are communities that cannot be saved, that needs to be put on the table, told to those communities, not to people from Baton Rouge or Washington. It needs to be a discussion in those communities about what's the honest truth of what's happening to them, what will be done and what will not be done to save them. And then those communities should have a say in how to protect themselves. I submit one area where we've all failed, and as Mr. Dupre said earlier, we're kind of, in Louisiana, we're our own worst enemies. I really feel that the Louisiana state bird should be changed from the brown pelican to the ostrich. We keep putting our head in the sand and pretending we're not seeing the water at our back. It's here, and we're not going to get the rest of America to save us. We have to save ourselves. And if we can't do that, we have to save us individually, our communities, our families, ourselves. And that's not a Washington decision. That's an us decision. For instance, the most valuable asset and community resource, natural resource in Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish is not oil and gas, it's land. There is very little land here. What's happening now, the only accessible high land in Terrebonne Parish is consistently being purchased by large corporations and wealthy landowners who are developing estate-sized properties. So in 5 years from now or 10 years from now, when people from East Houma who have limited resources realize or finally get the honest truth that, hey, you can't live here anymore, there will be no land for them to move to in Terrebonne Parish. No local officials at any level or state officials are using set-asides as a policy to protect lands for those people who may eventually be relocated and say we're not going to sell everything to the wealthier people. We're going to acknowledge we have poor people in our communities and they are vulnerable. We need to do that as a state. We need to do that as county or parishes, as cities. We need to protect ourselves. Yes, Washington needs to send us the money. We've paid most of the damages environmentally, and we should get a return for that. But in the meantime, we're just sitting around blaming everybody else when we're not protecting ourselves. So I challenge everyone here, the discussion should be, let's talk about communities. There are wonderful, talented, brilliant people, scientists, who can discuss how to save the coast. I submit that in the last 20 years, we've built more land in Iowa than we've built in Louisiana, and if you haven't built land, you're a failure, pure and simple.
I will say it's a very sobering meeting because these folks are facing land loss head on. And what happens in Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish is going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to sort of be the hallmark for what can happen, positive or negative in the future. And it's going to sort of signal a regional approach that we have to get together, put our personal special interests aside, and come together as communities to solve this problem.
The Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Task Force was established by executive order by the President, and it's a task force made up of leading federal and state leaders who are active in the Gulf and concerned about restoring the Gulf of Mexico.
And what kind of recommendations do you see forthcoming?
Well, we've been directed to develop a strategy that will look at the key issues in the Gulf that need to be addressed from an ecosystem perspective. It will include wetlands restoration, water quality improvement, protecting communities, and protecting the fisheries and wildlife of the Gulf.
And what do you feel needs to be done to make those protections?
Well, obviously we need to rebuild wetlands using sediments that are available, and we also need to improve water quality. We have a lot of nutrients that come down to the Gulf and create this dead zone every year. We need to cut the amount of nutrients that are coming down. Communities need to be better protected from storms and understand how to manage with both storms and sea level rise. So there are a lot of things that folks are already working on that we're looking at that we'd like to try to help support.
Any idea on a price tag on how much this would cost?
No, we haven't. We've not tried to. We're just trying to identify what really needs to be done at this point. We're not trying to put a price to it. You know, the Gulf is 600,000 square miles. It's a large place. Obviously, there are a lot of really important issues right in this area, but it's going to be expensive in some areas to address some of these problems. But it's certainly worth it considering what the Gulf returns to us.
What is the importance of the Gulf Coast region, and what is your message to Congress in terms of being able to get the restoration underway?
Well, the Gulf is important just from an economic standpoint. It's 30% of the gross national product of this country, from what it produces from navigation to oil and gas, commercial fisheries. But it's also very important from an environmental and natural resources standpoint and the quality of life standpoint. I'm very pleased that Congress is moving on their on establishing a restoration bill for the Gulf, and it was a recommendation that came out of the same executive order that created our task force. So we are sort of laying the groundwork for what Congress is working on.
With the current financial situation in Washington, do you feel that there will be enough support with the President and Congress to be able to get the job done?
Well, it's clearly a challenging budget climate everywhere, and so there is already dollars that are earmarked for the Gulf from some of the other programs, and there may be other dollars that come by the way of needing to restore the Gulf from the oil spill impacts. Some of those funds hopefully can be directed to helping to restore the Gulf.
We talk about no net loss of wetlands, but the main thing we need to focus on as we talk about the wetlands is we need to focus on why are the wetlands important and what does it mean to the culture of Louisiana, what does it mean to the people of Louisiana, and what does it mean to the cultural heritage of our state. It is a very vital and important part of what we do and who we are. So I think we need to think of wetland restoration more than just restoring habitat. We need to think of wetland restoration from the standpoint of restoring the home of the people of Louisiana along the coast.
Have you seen a northern migration of people from the coast moving northward?
But certainly in our area we have, and I'm from the southwest part of the state, Cameron Parish and that area, and yes, we have seen a migration of people off the coast, and that is unfortunate because when people leave the coast, they're leaving behind a way of life that is really truly unique to coastal Louisiana, and like I said just a moment ago, it's very much a part of who we are as a state. We lose the coast, we lose the people, we lose the people, we lose the culture, we lose the culture, we lose the personality, we lose the personality, we lose our identity as a state.
The reason that there's a northern migration in Terrebonne is because of two reasons. The lack of hurricane protection and the constant flooding that's affected our residents. In addition to that, insurance rates are obviously also affecting in the way of flood insurance as well as regular homeowners insurance that has wind and hail. So there's a migration north as a result of the constant flooding, the lack of hurricane protection, and with the challenges facing our people. I will say this, even with those challenges, we have a strong and vibrant population in the lower parts of the parish. It's not anywhere close to what it used to be, but it's still strong because they love Terrebonne. They were born here, and we have a community that doesn't seem to move too far from where they're born.
Are you concerned about that and the impact on the culture of this area?
Most definitely. We've had a strong French culture for many, many years, and that French culture and the love of life that we've always enjoyed, the great heritage that we have, is being challenged as a result of the migration out of our areas in the lower parts of the parish.
The northern migration in the parish is something we've seen happen for many, many years. It's not necessarily something that is done consciously, but certainly it's being done in a manner that is most economically efficient to the, particularly the families who are doing it. And they are looking for higher ground. They are looking for a way to ensure their future and make certain that where they are will be protected. You know, we've always attempted to alert but not alarm people, but at that same time that northern migration is something that's indicated in our permits process, where below the intercoastal we've only had about 10% growth. But above the intercoastal is where the growth is happening in the parish. So again, it's a subconscious move, but it's happening in Lafourche Parish.
Are you concerned about that? What kind of an impact is that going to have, particularly on the culture of this area?
It certainly will have an impact on the culture. The people who settled Lafourche Parish first were fishermen, and they wanted to live near the sea. Over the years, we've experienced a number of weather systems that have decimated the fishing industry, aside from man-made problems such as the cost of insurance, the cost of fueling their vessels. So losing the fishing industry very gradually will make us lose a part of the culture that was our foundation here for many years.
I'm just excited to be here. I think our efforts at the task force and our strategy that we're developing that we'll be releasing next week, October the 5th, we're releasing a strategy to the public to review. We'll take their comments and then provide that to the President as soon as we have a chance to look at their comments. Our missions are very similar. It's how can we listen to the people of the Gulf and develop a restoration strategy that comes straight from the Gulf and the people who live here.
And any idea what some of those key recommendations might be?
Well, I think clearly we have set 4 major goals I touched on. Protection of the habitat, which includes the wetlands areas, the water quality protection, which reducing nutrients and getting the flow of water right, protecting the actual critters, the oyster bars, the fish, marine creatures, And finally, how do we help communities be more resilient and do their planning for their part in terms of restoring the Gulf and having a high quality of life here.
Louisianans need to be able to make a convincing case to the nation that it understands the problem, it's prepared to make some hard decisions to deal with the problem, and that it's putting its own resources to address the problem, because many parts of the rest of the nation really aren't aware or necessarily sympathetic to the problems of our coastal regions down here. Some of those think it's our fault, that it's Louisianans did this to themselves, and others think that it's hopeless. So we need to be able to convince them that the folks understand the problem, be able to make some commitments to do it the right way, and are putting their own resources up and need federal help as a result.
How difficult it is to get anything done with bureaucracy.
Well, it's the process that's in place. It's something that's been utilized for decades, but we can't continue to implement projects with the same bureaucracy, issues, permitting, mitigation issues that we have to contend with. We'll never be able to advance and get ahead of the problem of coastal restoration unless we change the process of how we implement projects.
It's possible that these communities are going to have to step up because, as you know, the economy in Washington is not the topic that you want to talk about right now, particularly if you're in need in this country. What we did over the weekend was we went down and to a place that the federal government said they couldn't protect anymore, and we gathered 375 volunteers, and we started planting marsh grasses on a new technology to sort of say to these people that if the federal government leaves you out of levees, it doesn't mean that you're left out of protection. Coastal restoration is really what protects the levees and then ultimately protects the communities. That's really, the land is what the people have lived off of. So we're trying to make sure the land gets put back where it needs to be.
I've been encouraged by all these meetings. You have people who understand the issues, understand the challenges and the problems, and are talking about how we go about fixing this. And you have people who are dramatically and personally affected by it, and their cultures dramatically and adversely affected by it, talking about what they want their community to look like in the future and what they can do to try and salvage what we can salvage. The reality is Mother Nature is not going to stop, and she is going to continue to eat away at Louisiana's coastline.
Louisiana, at the end of the day, what we've tried to do is bring in all of those states that participate in offshore development. But at the end of the day, Louisiana, whether we like it or not, is the center stage for the disaster because we have the Mississippi Delta. And if we don't figure out a way to capture those assets of the river, we're going to be in trouble. I mean, at the end of the day, the Mississippi River made us, and the assets in that river are our salvation because we're dealing with an area that is subsiding over time with the encroachment of salt water, human intervention, and we've got some serious issues that need to be taken on a comprehensive basis to handle the largest single civil works effort that ever has been attempted by this government. And if we don't do it, we lose everything. So the options are clear. Suggesting that we can't do it is not on the table. We've got to figure out a way to do it.
We have a lot of information on www.americaswetland.org, and you should go there and participate in these discussions because we like to have as many comments from the public as we can. In fact, that's why we're having these sessions. We feel that the local voice needs much, much more to be elevated. The independent, not the political voice. The people who live in the places where they're affected the most. That's who we need to hear from.